Yasya nishvasitam veda, yo vede byokilam jagat, nirmame tamaham vande, vidyatir tamaheshvaram. A great honor to be with all of you, with great gratitude and reverence to the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Raghunathji, to the great leader of education in India, the Honorable Minister of Education, Ramesh Pokhriyalji, all the great leaders, swamis, professors, attendants from different areas, particularly, of course, also the Honorable Rakesh Bhatnagarji, Vice Chancellor of the Banaras University, for being with us, and all the honor that you have so generously bestowed upon me. And I want to give that honor, all of it, and unrestricted, to His Holiness Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, from the tradition of Vedic masters, Vedabhumi Bharat, Devabhumi Bharat, who has himself inspired and guided my research and had the vision of the reality of Vedantic truths, where consciousness is at the basis of everything. In fact, consciousness is everything. All that appears as material and surface level is only expression of different modes, different patterns, different networks within consciousness, looking at itself from different perspectives. We do see objects, we do see things, they are real, but they are actually a perspective in consciousness. We live our life through our consciousness. When we see an object, it is through our awareness, through a certain mechanics of the functioning of our awareness, that the object looks as it is. When we see colors, for example, in nature, it is just different wavelengths of light. There is, in fact, only color in our awareness. These wavelengths are translated as being red and green and blue because our nervous system has that capacity, has that ability to see from that perspective. If we had the ability to see the infrared and to see the ultraviolet or the X-rays, our world will be full of things that we see. If our nervous system was able to hear or compute certain radio waves, then we wouldn't need radios, we wouldn't need televisions to see things, because these waves are outside, they are there. So what we see through our senses is only one aspect of reality. That reality is one aspect of how consciousness looks at its own self. Now, in trying to understand life and living and the purpose of life and how life grows and where we're going, where we're coming from, there are two broadly ways, two methods that have been taken into consideration. One which is most ancient, most authentic, most profound, and that is the inward direction, the subjective direction, where the scientists of consciousness looked at consciousness itself. How does consciousness move? How does consciousness vibrate? How does consciousness change, emerge, transform, modify itself, and expresses itself? And this is the inward direction, closing the eyes and taking one's own consciousness towards the inner value. And that itself is a research in consciousness. It's a scientific research, but very profound, very deep, very systematic, and very effective. It's a subjective approach, going to the subject of reality. In the reality, there is a subject, That is how consciousness manifests. There is a subject, an experiencer, a conscious person that is experiencing an object. There is the object of perception, the subject of perception, and the connectedness between these two aspects of reality, the subject and the object. In modern science, modern Western approach, it is the object that has been interesting. So science went into the study of the object of perception, the study of the physical reality. From biology, the biological system, we study biology based on its chemistry, how the chemistry influences biology. From the chemistry, we find more fundamental level of laws of nature that are in physics, how physics influences or creates chemistry. So physics creates chemistry, chemistry creates biology, biology has physiology, physiology is on the higher level mind as if, and behavior and society. But what is physics? The objective level of investigation took us to scanning and studying that the material level of reality is actually only energy. And this energy is based on different fields of energy, electromagnetism, weak forces, strong forces, gravitational forces. And as the scientists kept diving deep into what creates physics, what creates energy, they found that there are unified fields, that all these values that are separate on the surface are unified in one field, and that field they call unified field of all the laws of nature. So there is the M2 theory, the supersymmetric theory, the superstring theory. There are different theories, but all point to this oneness of reality, one unbounded field of pure existence that manifests into different layers of manifestation and different expressions on the surface. Therefore, the ultimate search in objectivity led us to one field of pure existence. The ultimate search in the field of subjectivity, looking inward, led us to one field of pure being, pure consciousness, Sat Chit Ananda. And that Ananda, that pure field of being, Ananda Deva Kalvimani Bhutani Jayanti, Anandena Jatani Jivanti, that is the source of all, that is that to which everything comes. So ultimate subjectivity and ultimate objectivity led to the same thing. Both are sciences. One is an inward science of consciousness. The other is an outward science of the physical reality of life. What did they discover? The same thing. One pure field of consciousness. And that field of consciousness is who we are. It's who every object is, because the unified field becomes energy, energy fields become particles, particles become atoms, molecules, cells, and organs, and bodies, and so all comes from that unified field. All is consciousness, pure consciousness. That's what the Veda tells us. Now, how does field manifest? What happens in the process of manifestation? This is also what the rishis discovered. They discovered how the unified field of consciousness manifests as different vibrations of consciousness, different reverberations that then become surface values. And this is where Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, in his profound vision, said that the Veda is total knowledge. It's total knowledge not only on a philosophical level, on a poetic level, on a social level, on a psychological level, on an educational level, on specific values of Ayurveda and Jyotish and Yagya and all of that. This is there, it's all there, but it's also a direct experience by the rishis who are doing the research in consciousness, the subjective research, discover the fluctuations of the one field of consciousness appearing into multiple manifestation. So Maharishi said, this is total knowledge on the level of its expressions, just how it vibrates. And he said that the Veda, therefore, on its most profound level, is sound and silence. Sound and silence. Mantra Brahmanayor Vedanam Dheyam. Mantra and Brahmana, Maharishi explains Brahmana as the mechanics of transformation, and mantra is the sound. So both the sound and the silence in which the mechanics of transformation happen are what Veda is. And therefore, the sound of Rig Veda is expressed in an orderly fashion, and that orderly fashion has a structure. Syllables, there are padas, there are richas, there are suktas, there are mandalas. There is a set of mandalas, 10 mandalas in Rig Veda, and how one relates to the other, and how the sounds relate and their structure relate to each other. And like that, the entire Veda is most basically, profoundly, is an expression of how the unified field, how the field of consciousness vibrates and manifests. So therefore, in its manifestation, its structure is important, because it is the structure that creates the structures that we see in the universe, that create the structure of our human body, the structure of our process of thinking and behaving, and the structure by which we create society, the structure of our language, in which we have a subject, a verb that connects the subject to an object. So subject, verb, object. Why do we think like this? It's because natural law is like this. And Maharishi equated actually these to Rishi, Devata, Chandas. He said that the Rishi is the seer, the knower. Devata is the process of knowing. And Chandas, even though it's a meter, it's a sound, but it expresses the surface value, the sound value on an object level. So there is the subject, the process, and the object, and their relationship. Now, this is very, very profound and very precise, very precise. So it's not open to just interpretation, philosophical feelings, or philosophical ideas. The structure is something set. It is very set. So he asked me to research the relationship between the structure of Veda, which is total knowledge on its level of structure and dynamism, and the structure of our body. Why? Because our human nervous system, our body, is able to transcend, is able to experience samadhi, it's able to rise in higher states of consciousness. Therefore, its structure has to be aligned with the structure of nature in the most complete way. And that is why in the Veda it is said, Aham Brahmasmi. It's Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the universe, is the atom, that self is like that. Sarvam Kalvidam Ved. But Aham Brahmasmi, Vedoham, I am the Veda. And these for Maharishi were not just terms of inspiration and philosophy, but they are real on the physical level. And so he asked me to compare the structure and function of the Veda with the structure and function of the human body. And what I discovered with Maharishi's grace and guidance is that they are exactly the same. So the structure of the Veda, how many syllables, how many padas, how many divisions, how many subdivisions, in this particular part which does this particular function, this other part which does this other function, correspond to the different parts of our nervous system that can experience actually the more subtle levels, and when they come together in a coherent way, they experience totality, they experience Brahman, they experience Satchit Ananda, bliss, pure being. They experience Shanti. They experience fullness of inner silence, absolute calmness, and they can use that in creativity, in power, in energy, in ability to achieve maximum and to be maximum in life. And that comes to the technology of the Veda. So this is the science of the Veda. The science is the knowledge of the Veda as being a true science of consciousness. Subjective it is because it is experienced directly in the consciousness, but it is proven now objectively in the sense that it has the same dynamics as the dynamics of the human physiology and the dynamics of the nervous system. And this unifies matter and consciousness. This unifies intelligence and physiology. They are one and the same, appearing in different modes. And therefore, we have access to the reservoir of infinite intelligence that manages the entire universe and maintains it in perfect order. That reservoir of intelligence is our self, our true self. Sarvam kalvidam Brahm. Everything is Brahm. Everything is pure consciousness manifesting in these different modes, in different patterns, in different networks of expressions of consciousness. And therefore, where is the most powerful level to create Shanti, to create peace, to create strength, to create happiness? It is in that infinite reservoir of creativity and intelligence which is within us. And that is what unifies people, because it is the sap that nourishes all aspects of the different trees. It is the field that creates the different colors of the flowers of the trees, the different shape of the trunk, of the branches, of the leaves, of the fruit, the different tastes, the different aspects, all of them so different on the surface. If you try to put an orange with an apple and tell them to be at peace, but try to change yourself a little on the surface, and you try to change yourself on the surface, they would not want to change. It's boring. Life would be boring. They are beautiful in their fullness, but where do they find peace? Because they know they are one and the same sap that has become different aspects, that have manifested into different aspects. So the one unified field is a field of consciousness. And that field can be enlivened through the technology of consciousness. Because Veda is not just a science, it's perfect science, but it's also a technology. So there is a means, there is a way to do it. For those who have gone astray, who are lost, who are confused, who are stressed, they have lost the basic integrity of the Brahman that is within them. So what we need is to clear up the stresses, remove the strains, bring them back to their reality. It's not changing them, actually. It's bringing them back to what they are, in the same way as after the teaching on the battlefield, Krishna teaches Arjuna and teaches Arjuna and teaches Arjuna. And then Arjuna at the end, he said, Smriti Labda. I regain my memory. He doesn't say I become something else. Oh, I discover something new. He says, I regain my memory. Now I know I am that. And I had kind of forgotten it. So the technology of Veda brings the individual back to fullness of life, to the true nature of who they are, which is infinite peace, infinite happiness. And that is through transcendental meditation, the techniques that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi has taught from the holy tradition, from Gurudev Brahmananda Saraswati, who was the Jagat Guru of Jyotirma, and all the tradition of Vedic masters, Narayana, Padmapavan, Vashishtam, Shakti, and his son Chadatputra, Parasharam, Vyasam, Shukadev, etc., all the great rishis, Shankara and his disciples, that have actually transmitted that technology and that knowledge that brings us back to ourselves and brings the collectivity back also to itself. The whole society is brought back. The collective consciousness of society is settled down. And this is what the research has shown. Therefore, on an objective level, it is proven through many scientific research to improve individual life and to improve social life. Peace on earth is a mental thing. It's not a physical thing. When you study the reality of what is in the world, as Prime Minister, a great Prime Minister of Curaçao mentioned that, you know, if you look at the physical, he hinted to that point, there is enough food, there is enough water, there is enough land, there is enough air, there is enough of everything for everybody to be happy and to live happy and to grow in happiness. And this is something which the UNESCO has recognized 75 years ago, when the whole nations after the Second World War came together with the hope to create peace and make this war the last war that will never be any war anymore. So what they did is create the United Nations, education, science and cultural organization, UNESCO, to study the culture, the education, the science, and see what to do. And when they studied all of this, they wrote in their preamble that war is created in the mind. And since war is created in the mind and peace is only can be created in the mind, it is in the mind that we should look to construct the basis of peace. Nobody has such an access to the mind more than those who have made their life research in consciousness, and that is the Vedic tradition. The Vedic yoga, dharma, all these values that have come from the different aspects of the Veda are the scientists of consciousness. They have the tools to make the mind clear, to make the mind peaceful, and to be able to transform society from the most profound, most basic, most important level of reality itself, the unified field, the field of pure being, the Vedantic reality that we are all one. And when you awaken to that, you can enjoy your difference and be as different as you like, but inside you, you know you are everyone. So who do you want to fight? Fight yourself? Because you are everything. It's only ignorance that makes you feel me and you and him and her, and I'm afraid of they take this from me, I give this to them, etc. That is on the surface level. But when the awakening is deep within, on the individual level and the collective level, then peace becomes spontaneous. We don't have to make even effort for it. It becomes a spontaneous manifestation of the reality of living in oneness, in wholeness. And that is the blessings of the Vedic tradition. So my pranam and adoration to all the Vedic sages present today with us, representative, the inheritors of this knowledge, to the Prime Minister of India, the President of India, to the government of India who supports this knowledge, and all the swamis and leaders and rishis that have kept this knowledge in its perfection, of the pandits that are chanting the Veda, that are reverberating the Veda from the field of inner silence, inner settledness, supporting natural law, because the laws of nature that manifests the whole universe, that create the universe, are the vibrations of the Veda. They are within the Veda. And when they are chanted on that level, from the transcendental level, of course, on the surface level, it can have an effect. But when the Pandit is transcending, is established within, and they chant from that level, then their power is absolute, it's infinite, and it creates perfection in life for every individual and all society. Pranams to all of you. I'm being honored and humbled, and it's always great to be connected with such great leaders. All glory to the tradition of Vedic masters. Jai Guru Dev.